I stood frozen in the attic, the yellowed letter trembling in my hands. The words blurred as tears welled up, but their meaning was crystal clear. My husband, Ethan, had betrayed me. Laura, where are you? Ethan's voice drifted up from below. I quickly folded the letter and shoved it into my pocket. Up here, I called back, trying to keep my voice steady. Footsteps creaked on the stairs, and Ethan's head popped through the trapdoor. What are you doing up here? We need to finish unpacking before. Before what, Ethan? I cut him off, my voice sharp. Before your mother arrives? His brow furrowed. What are you talking about? I pulled out the letter, holding it up like evidence in a courtroom. I found this. You and Gloria planned for her to move in all along, didn't you? Ethan's face paled, then flushed. Laura, it's not what you think. Really? Because it looks like you've been lying to me for months. I could feel my anger rising, hot and fierce. When were you planning to tell me? Or were you just going to wait until she showed up on our doorstep? Ethan reached for the letter, but I snatched it away. It's not a big deal, Laura. She's family. Family. I laughed bitterly. Family doesn't go behind each other's backs like this. We're supposed to be partners, Ethan. We're having a baby, for God's sake. Before Ethan could respond, the doorbell rang. We both froze, staring at each other. That'll be Mom, Ethan said quietly. I felt the blood drain from my face. She's here? Now. Ethan nodded, looking sheepish. I was going to tell you. I pushed past him, my mind reeling. As I descended the stairs, I could hear Gloria's voice floating up from the entryway. Ethan, darling? Where are you? I've brought some things to spruce up this dreary little house. I paused at the bottom of the stairs, taking a deep breath. This was supposed to be our fresh start, our new beginning. Instead, it felt like the beginning of the end. With one hand on my slightly swollen belly, I stepped into the hallway to face my mother-in-law and the future I never agreed to. I woke to the sound of furniture scraping across hardwood floors. For a moment, I thought I was dreaming. Then reality hit me like a bucket of ice water. Gloria! I rushed downstairs, still in my pajamas, to find my living room completely rearranged. Gloria stood in the center, hands on her hips, surveying her handiwork. What are you doing? I demanded, my voice cracking with disbelief. Gloria turned, her smile saccharine. Oh, good morning, dear. I'm just giving this place a woman's touch. You wouldn't understand, of course. My fists clenched at my sides. This is my home, Gloria. You have no right to change things without asking. Now, she cooed, patting my arm condescendingly. I'm just trying to help. This house was in desperate need of some improvements. I jerked away from her touch. Where's Ethan? He left for work early. Such a dedicated boy. Gloria's eyes narrowed. Unlike some people who sleep half the day away. Before I could retort, the doorbell rang. Gloria bustled past me to answer it. That'll be the painters. I've decided this dreadful beige has to go. Painters? I sputtered, following her. You can't just. But Gloria had already ushered two men inside, pointing out walls and chattering about color swatches. I stood there, invisible in my own home, as chaos swirled around me. I retreated to the kitchen, desperate for coffee and a moment to think. But even here, Gloria's presence was inescapable. My carefully organized cabinets had been ransacked, their contents rearranged according to her whims. As I reached for a mug, my hand brushed against an unfamiliar canister. Curious, I pulled it out. My heart sank as I read the label, decaf coffee. I took the liberty of replacing that nasty caffeinated stuff. Gloria's voice came from behind me. It's not good for the baby, you know. I whirled around, anger bubbling up inside me. That's not your decision to make. Gloria sked. Someone has to look out for my grandchild since you clearly can't be trusted to do so. The mug slipped from my grasp, shattering on the floor. Gloria jumped back, her face a mask of disapproval. Really, Laura, she sighed. Is this the sort of behavior you want to model for my grandchild? I stared at the broken pieces of ceramic, feeling my control slipping away just as surely. This was supposed to be my home, my safe haven. But with every passing moment, it felt less like mine and more like Gloria's domain. As I knelt to clean up the mess, I caught sight of my reflection in a shard of the broken mug. The woman looking back at me seemed small, defeated. I barely recognized her. In that moment, I knew something had to change. I couldn't let Gloria steamroll over my life, my choices, my very identity. But as I heard her directing the painters in the next room, I wondered if it was already too late. I was at my wits' end when Ethan finally came home that evening. The house reeked of fresh paint, and Gloria's voice echoed from the kitchen, where she was busy reorganizing my pantry. "Ethan, we need to talk," I said, pulling him into our bedroom. He sighed, loosening his tie. "What is it now, Laura? Your mother is out of control. She's taken over our home, and I can't take it anymore." Ethan's face hardened. "She's just trying to help. Why can't you appreciate that?" "Appreciate?" I sputtered. "She's criticizing everything I do, changing our home without asking, and treating me like I'm incompetent." "You're overreacting," Ethan said dismissively. "Mom knows what's best. She raised me after all." I felt like I'd been slapped. "I'm your wife, Ethan. We're supposed to be partners. How can you side with her over me?" "Because you're being unreasonable," he snapped. "If you can't live with my mother, maybe we shouldn't be together." The room fell silent. I stared at him, shocked. "Is that a threat or a promise, Ethan?" His eyes widened, realizing what he'd said. "Laura, I didn't mean." "No, I think you did." I cut him off, my voice trembling. "You've made your choice clear." Just then, Gloria burst into the room. "Ethan, darling, I've made your favorite dinner." "Oh, and Laura," she added, her tone dripping with false sweetness, "I've taken the liberty of setting some house rules. I think it's important we all get on the same page, don't you?" I looked from Gloria's smug face to Ethan's conflicted one. In that moment, I saw my future stretching out before me. A life of constant criticism, of being second best in my own home, of fighting for scraps of respect. "No," I said quietly. "What was that, dear?" Gloria asked, her smile faltering. I straightened my spine, finding strength I didn't know I had. I said no. "This is my home, and I won't live by your rules, Gloria." "Now, Laura." Ethan started, but I held up a hand to stop him. "And you, Ethan, you need to decide right now. Are you my husband, or are you her son? Because I can't be married to both of you." The silence that followed was deafening. Ethan looked between his mother and me, his face a mask of indecision. Gloria's eyes narrowed dangerously. "Well," I pressed, my heart pounding. "What's it going to be?" As I waited for Ethan's response, I realized that no matter what he said, everything had already changed. The life I thought I had, the future I'd planned, it was all slipping away. And in its place, a new path was forming, one I never expected but now seemed inevitable. The question was, would I have the courage to take it? I couldn't breathe. The walls of our once cozy home seemed to close in on me, suffocating and oppressive. After Ethan's ultimatum, I knew I needed to get out, if only for a few hours. I grabbed my keys and fled, ignoring Gloria's shrill questions about where I was going.
The drive to my parents' house was a blur. Tears streamed down my face as I pulled into their driveway. Mom opened the door before I could even knock, her face etched with concern. "Laura, honey, what's wrong?" I collapsed into her arms, sobbing. Dad appeared behind her, his steady presence a comfort I desperately needed. Once inside, I poured out everything: the letter, Gloria's takeover, Ethan's betrayal. Mom and Dad listened, their faces growing more troubled with each revelation. "You deserve better than this, sweetheart," Mom said, squeezing my hand. "Have you thought about what's best for you and the baby?" I shook my head, overwhelmed. "I don't know what to do. I love Ethan, but I can't live like this anymore." Dad cleared his throat. "Laura, your mother and I have been talking. We're moving to a bigger house next month, and we want you to know that there's always a place for you there, if you need it." The offer hung in the air, a lifeline I hadn't known I needed. For the first time in weeks, I felt a glimmer of hope. Just then, my phone buzzed. A text from Rachel says, "Gloria's gone too far. Call me ASAP." My heart raced as I dialed Rachel's number. Her voice was hushed and urgent when she answered. "Laura, I overheard Gloria talking to Ethan. She's planning to have you declared an unfit mother after the baby's born. She wants custody." The world tilted on its axis. What? She can't do that. She's got money and connections, Laura. And from what I heard, Ethan's not opposing it. I felt sick. This wasn't just about me anymore, it was about my child's future. "There's more," Rachel continued. "Gloria's been going through your things. She found your diary and medical records. She's building a case against you. The violation of privacy, the betrayal, the sheer audacity of it all, it was too much." In that moment, something inside me snapped. "Laura?" Mom's voice was gentle. "What do you want to do?" I looked at my parents, their love and support unwavering. I thought of my unborn child, innocent and deserving of a peaceful life. And I thought of Ethan, the man I loved who had chosen his mother over his wife and child. My hand instinctively went to my belly, protective and determined. "I want to fight," I said, my voice stronger than I felt. "I want to protect my baby and I want my life back." Dad nodded, a fierce pride in his eyes. "Then that's what we'll do. Together." As I hung up with Rachel, promising to meet her soon, I realized I was standing at a crossroads. Path ahead was uncertain and frightening, but for the first time in months, I felt a surge of determination. Gloria had underestimated me. She thought I was weak, easily controlled. But she was about to learn just how strong a mother's love could be. I stood in my kitchen, surrounded by the chaos of Gloria's latest improvements, trying to prepare for the dinner party she had insisted on throwing. My hands shook as I chopped vegetables, the weight of my decision to fight back heavy on my shoulders. The doorbell rang, and I heard Gloria's saccharine voice welcoming our guests. Ethan's colleagues and their wives filed in, filling our home with polite chatter and forced laughter. "Laura, dear," Gloria called. "Bring out the hors d'oeuvres, won't you?" I gritted my teeth and carried the tray out, plastering on a smile. As I circulated, I overheard snippets of conversation. "Gloria, you've done wonders with this place," one of the wives gushed. "Oh, thank you," Gloria preened. "It needed a woman's touch. Poor Laura here just doesn't have the knack for homemaking." I felt my cheeks burn but kept my composure. As the evening wore on, Gloria's jabs became more frequent and pointed. Each time I looked to Ethan for support, but he remained silent, his eyes fixed on his drink. When it came time to serve dinner, I brought out the roast I'd spent hours preparing. Gloria took one bite and made a face. "Laura, dear," she said loudly, "maybe you should leave the cooking to someone who knows what they're doing. I'll take over from here." The room fell silent. I saw pity in some guests' eyes, amusement in others. Ethan shifted uncomfortably but said nothing. Something inside me snapped. "No," I said, my voice steady and clear. Gloria blinked. "Excuse me?" I said, "No, Gloria. I've had enough. This ends now." I turned to our guests. "I'm sorry, but I'm going to have to ask you all to leave." Shocked murmurs filled the room as people began to gather their things. Gloria sputtered, her face red with anger and embarrassment. As the last "I will not be bullied or belittled in my own house anymore." Gloria's eyes narrowed. "How dare you embarrass us like this? Ethan, are you going to let her speak to me this way?" I held my breath, waiting for Ethan's response. But as I looked at him, I saw a man I no longer recognized. His silence spoke volumes. In that moment, I made my decision. "I'm leaving," I said quietly. "I can't live like this anymore." Ethan's head snapped up. "Laura, wait." But I was already heading for the stairs. As I packed a bag, I could hear Gloria's shrill voice and Ethan's muffled responses. My hand rested on my swollen belly, and I felt a fierce determination rise within me. This wasn't just about me anymore. It was about my child and the life I wanted us to have. A life free from manipulation and constant criticism. As I walked out the front door, bag in hand, I didn't look back. The cool night air felt like freedom on my skin. I had no idea what the future held, but for the first time in months, I felt hope. I pulled out my phone and dialed. Mom? Dad? I'm coming home. I need your help. The morning light filtered through the curtains of my childhood bedroom as I carefully folded another shirt into my suitcase. My parents' new house felt like a sanctuary, but I knew it was only temporary. I had to plan my next move carefully. My phone buzzed with a text from Rachel. How are you holding up? Need any help? I smiled, grateful for her support. I'm okay. Can you meet me at the lawyer's office at 2? As I zipped up my suitcase, I heard my mom's gentle knock. Laura, honey. There's someone here to see you. My heart raced as I descended the stairs, half expecting to see Ethan. Instead, I found Gloria sitting primly on the edge of the sofa, her face a mask of concern. Laura, dear, she cooed, rising to her feet. We've been so worried. It's time to come home now. I felt a surge of anger. This is my home now, Gloria. I'm not going back. Her eyes narrowed. Don't be foolish. Think of the baby. Think of Ethan. I am thinking of my baby, I said, my hand instinctively moving to my belly. That's why I'm doing this. Gloria's facade cracked. You ungrateful little, she caught herself, composing her features. Laura, you don't want to do this. It would be such a shame if the courts found out about your instability. I froze. What are you talking about? She smiled, cold and triumphant. Your medical records, dear. Your history of anxiety. It wouldn't look good for a mother, would it? The room spun. How did she know? Then I remembered Rachel's warning about Gloria going through my things. Rage and fear battled within me. You can't do this, I whispered. Oh, but I can, Gloria purred. Unless you come home now and forget this silly notion of independence. I looked at my mom, who had been silently watching the exchange. Her eyes were filled with a mixture of concern and determination. Gloria, my mom said firmly, I think it's time for you to leave. Gloria's mouth opened in shock, but before she could speak, my dad appeared in the doorway. You heard my wife, he said, his voice low and dangerous. Get out of our house. As Gloria stormed out, slamming the door behind her, I collapsed onto the sofa, shaking. My parents sat on either side of me, their presence comforting. What am I going to do? I asked, my voice barely audible. She's going to try to take my baby. My dad squeezed my hand. We won't let that happen, sweetheart. We'll fight this together. I nodded, trying to believe him. But as I sat there, surrounded by love yet feeling more vulnerable than ever, I realized the true battle was just beginning. Gloria had declared war, and I had to be ready. With trembling fingers, I picked up my phone and dialed my lawyer's number. It was time to fight fire with fire. As the phone rang, I steeled myself for the battle ahead. My baby's future depended on it. The shrill ring of the doorbell pierced the quiet afternoon. My heart leaped into my throat as I exchanged a worried glance with my parents. We weren't expecting anyone. Dad moved to answer it, but before he could reach the door, it burst open. Ethan stormed in, his face a mask of fury, with Gloria close behind. Laura! Ethan shouted. What the hell is going on? You can't just leave like this. I stood my ground, my hands protectively cradling my swollen belly. I can and I did, Ethan. You made your choice. Gloria pushed past her son, her eyes blazing. You ungrateful little witch. After everything we've done for you. Enough. My mother's voice cut through the chaos. This is our home and you weren't invited. Leave now or we'll call the police. Ethan's face softened slightly. Laura, please. Let's talk about this. We can work it out. For a moment, I wavered. The man I'd fallen in love with seemed to be peeking through the stranger he'd become. But then I remembered all the nights I'd cried myself to sleep, all the times he'd chosen his mother over me. There's nothing to work out, Ethan, I said, my voice steady. I filed for divorce. The room fell silent. Ethan's face drained of color. Divorce? But the baby. Gloria's shriek cut him off. You can't do this. That child is an Ellison. We won't let you take it away from us. That's where you're wrong, I said, pulling out a folder from the side table. These are restraining orders against both of you. My lawyer filed them this morning. Ethan stumbled back as if I'd struck him. Laura, you can't be serious. This isn't you. You're right, Ethan. This isn't the me you knew. This is the me who's fighting for her child and her future. Gloria lunged forward, her manicured nails reaching for the papers. Dad intercepted her, his large frame blocking her path. Get out, he growled. Now. As Ethan and Gloria were ushered out, their protests echoing down the driveway, I felt a strange mix of relief and sorrow wash over me. The door closed with a final thud, and I sank onto the couch, exhausted. Mom sat beside me, wrapping an arm around my shoulders. You did it, sweetheart. You stood up for yourself. I nodded, tears streaming down my face. But it's not over, is it? They'll fight this. Gloria will use everything she has against me. Dad knelt in front of me, his eyes filled with determination. Then we'll fight back. Together. You're not alone in this, Laura. As I sat there, surrounded by the unwavering support of my parents, I felt a flutter in my belly. My baby moving as if in agreement. For the first time in months, I allowed myself to hope. The battle ahead would be tough, but I was ready. I had found my strength, and I wouldn't let anyone, not Ethan, not Gloria, take away the future I was building for myself and my child. This was just the beginning of my new chapter, and I was determined to write it on my own terms. The soft glow of the nursery lamp cast a warm light over the pale yellow walls as I gently rocked in the chair, my hand resting on my now prominent belly. It had been 3 months since the confrontation with Ethan and Gloria, and life had taken on a new rhythm. The legal battle had been fierce, just as we'd anticipated. Gloria had thrown everything she had at me, my medical records, fabricated stories of instability, even attempts to turn mutual friends against me. But with each attack, I found myself growing stronger, more determined. My parents had been my rocks, standing by me through every court appearance and late-night cry. Rachel had rallied our friends, showing me who my true support system was. And surprisingly, some of Ethan's colleagues had come forward, testifying about Gloria's manipulative behavior and Ethan's increasing instability under her influence. The final hearing had been yesterday. As I sat in the courtroom, my heart pounding, I caught Ethan's eye. For a moment, I saw a flicker of the man I'd fallen in love with, lost, confused, and finally realizing the consequences of his choices. But it was too late for us. The judge's decision was clear. Full custody to me, with Ethan granted supervised visitation only after completing therapy and parenting classes. Gloria was served with a permanent restraining order. As the gavel fell, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. It was over. We had won. Now, sitting in the quiet of the nursery, I felt my baby kick, as if celebrating with me. I smiled, tears of relief and joy streaming down my face. We did it, little one, I whispered. We're going to be okay. A soft knock at the door pulled me from my reverie. Mom peeked in, her face glowing with pride and love. How are you feeling, sweetheart? She asked, coming to stand beside me. I took her hand, squeezing it gently. I feel free, I said, the word tasting sweet on my tongue. For the first time in so long, I can breathe. Dad appeared in the doorway, his eyes twinkling. That's our girl, he said, his voice gruff with emotion. As I looked at my parents, I felt a surge of gratitude. Thank you, I said, my voice thick. for standing by me, for believing in me. I couldn't have done this without you. Mom leaned down to kiss my forehead. You're stronger than you know, Laura. We just reminded you of that strength. I nodded, feeling the truth of her words settle into my bones. I was stronger. I had faced my fears, stood up to my tormentors, and reclaimed my life. As the sun began to set, casting a golden glow through the window, I felt a sense of peace wash over me. The road ahead wouldn't be easy, single motherhood never is, but I was ready for the challenge. This wasn't the ending I had once imagined for myself, but as I sat there, surrounded by love and the promise of new beginnings, I realized it was the ending I needed. My story wasn't over, it was just beginning. And this time, I would be the author of my own happiness.